Chris Monk, owner of Highline Guitars, and in this episode from the Luthier's Workbench, I thought I'd just throw out some tips on guitar building, little things that I've learned along the way that you might find useful. So let's get started. Normally when you're sanding wood, you'll start out with a coarse grit of sandpaper, and that can be anywhere from 80 to 150 grit. And in order to get the surface level and smooth and consistent and to reduce the high spots, it's always a good idea to wrap the sandpaper around a wooden sanding block. Wood, because it's so hard, allows you to aggressively remove those high spots and any deep scratches and gouges and tool marks and that sort of thing. However, when you get to the finer grits and start to get that surface as smooth as possible, it's always a good idea to switch to a foam sanding block. And foam offers cushion, which reduces the aggressiveness of the sanding and takes out those scratches and makes it a very smooth surface. However, when you get into these tight curves, it can be really hard to get that sanding block in there. Even though it will, to some extent, conform, it's a bit of a problem where you've got really tight curves. So what I do is I use just a length of either wood dowel, like 3/4 of an inch in diameter, or in this case, just a piece of scrap PVC. And then, PVC and wood dowels are pretty hard. So what I need to do is I need to cushion the surface. So what I do is I just take a piece of paper towel and wrap it up. This is one of those half sheets. You can get these at the grocery store. It's not a full sheet. It's actually perforated so that you've got half sheets instead of the full. And you wrap it up, and that's going to give me perfect cushion. Then all I have to do is take just a quarter sheet of sandpaper and wrap it around, and that produces a very cushioned surface, which I can now easily sand into these areas. Okay, here's a tip for you. Buy or make your own buffing machine. Having a buffing machine will greatly speed up the process of buffing out your guitar to a high gloss finish. The reason for that is because, when you're trying to buff out a finish by hand using rubbing compound and, that sort of thing, you typically have to sand the surface all the way to, like 2,000 grit. I know some guys who use micromesh and go all the way to 12,000 grit. And that just takes a huge amount of time. But with a buffing machine, this one in particular, for me, I can stop at 800 grit, and then I'm ready to buff it out to a mere gloss shine. And I use a brown Menzerna coarse compound with this wheel, and then a tan Menzerna fine polishing compound on this wheel. And this particular machine I just made myself, and it's a 1/3 horsepower, 1725 RPM furnace motor, and it's uses a V-belt system and pulleys which reduce the RPM to about 900 RPM, which is what I find seems to work really well with nitrocellulose, acrylic, urethane, polyester. That's a good speed for it. And I use a threaded shaft. It's a 3 foot wide threaded shaft. This one is 1 1/4 inch in diameter, but you can go down to, 3/4 inch. It uses jam nuts at each end to hold the buffing wheels in place while it's spinning, so that the whole thing doesn't fly apart. And a couple of pillow block bearings. Real simple and easy to use, and it has really simplified achieving mere gloss finishes. I also use it to polish bone nuts, just a wide variety of different tasks. And I highly recommend, if you're going to be making more than one guitar, to seriously consider investing in this type of piece of equipment. Okay, I've got a really cool trick for you. This is something I came up with several years ago. I was in the process of getting ready to polish some frets that I had just leveled. And normally when I polished frets, I was using one of these Dremel motor tools with a felt polishing pad. And as I was about to do it, I discovered that my Dremel had burned out. So, and this was before I had the buffing machine that I just showed you. So I had to figure out a way to polish them by hand, but I still needed to do it fairly quickly. So what I came up with was I took my sheet-fed sander, and instead of putting sandpaper on the pad, I put a piece of denim. And sure enough, it worked great, polished up the frets nicely. So I've kind of experimented and found that you can use denim, you can use cloth, you can use shop towels, paper towels, any reasonably durable material that's not too aggressive or abrasive. And you can actually combine it with rubbing compound, polishing compound, swirl remover, and get a great finish. You just want to make sure that you use different materials with each different compound, because if you mix them up, then you're going to contaminate them and you're never going to get a good polish out of it. So next time you need to polish something and you don't have a buffing machine or a Dremel handy, give this a try. I think you'll be surprised. Okay, so here's, this isn't actually a cool trick, it's a cool tool. This is one of those oscillating multifunction tools. I got this one at Harbor Freight, and I think I paid like 20 bucks for it. But it uses accessories like this, I don't know what you would call that. It's like a grinding accessory or carving accessory. It also uses one of these, it's a triangular sanding accessory, and you can put different grits of sandpaper on it. It's just attached with Velcro. Cut-off blade. But what I did was I needed, what I wanted was like a random orbital sander or an oscillating sander, but something that would get into a really tight, difficult to reach areas. So what I did was I took one of these cut-off blades and I ground off the teeth, and then I ground off each side to make it a little bit narrower, so it's about 1/8 of an inch narrower on each side. Then what I did was I drilled a couple of holes. I carved a piece of maple so that it's got this kind of a rounded shape to it. And then I attach it with a pair of wood screws and washers. So then all I have to do is slide on a piece of sandpaper. It's a little tricky to get it on, but just like that, and then tighten the screws. And then I've got this really simple miniature oscillating sander, and I can sand into some really tight curves with it. I can also cushion it with like a piece of denim, and that will make it sand much softer and less aggressively, so I can move all the way up through very fine grit. So if you've got one of these tools, pick up an extra one of these and fabricate yourself one of these, and you'll be sanding the inside of guitar body cutouts with no problem at all. Okay, well that's it for the tips today. I'll probably shoot video down the road showing some other tips and tricks that I come up with. I've got a bunch of them in my head. But in the next episode from the Luthier's Workbench, which should be episode 22, I'm going to start a two-part series on how to apply Minwax wipe-on poly. I know you've seen this at the hardware store, and you've probably thought, I wonder if that would make a good guitar finish. Well, I can tell you it does, and I'll show you the technique that I use to apply it. So stay tuned.